Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fourth of 5 meetings for short-term rentals in Temecula. My name is Brandon Rabideau. I'm Assistant Planner with the City of Temecula, and I'm here to facilitate this meeting this evening. So first of all, just a brief little introduction. We are holding these community meetings to get feedback on short-term rentals. We want feedback, whether it's positive or negative, on the topic of short-term rentals, and we're coming out to the different 5 districts of the community to get that feedback. We have a survey that's a part of this process, and people are available. Anyone can take it online, but we also have some polling that we'll be doing at the end of this meeting as well. So please stay to the end of the meeting. We'll discuss that a little bit more. So why are we here? Again, we're here to do get community feedback, positive, negative, anywhere in between. This feedback is going to help us on during the process of writing regulations, whatever they may or may not be. The first phase of that process is data collection, so these community meetings are part of that data collection process. We'll be doing that online survey like we mentioned, and we may do additional meetings to gather additional community input. The second phase of that process is going to be policy guidance. And we're going to take all of the data that we gather and put that in front of our policymakers and get feedback on what should that policy look like. A little bit of a timeline. Our timeline, again, these dates can change based on the information we're getting. If we need to do additional research, we're doing these meetings during the summer, and then we're going to be moving into subcommittee meetings. Subcommittee meetings essentially take 2 members of our planning commission and or our city council, and we get the basic information in front of them, the basic data in front of them, and then we start to craft policies based on that. So we take it out to 2 people and say, hey, what do you think on this topic? And we start getting that initial guidance. Then, once we do that, we have to take that information before the entire body. So a body would be the planning commission, and then the body would be the city council. So we take all that information, and then they can provide additional guidance, feedback, and ultimately make final decisions on policies. Again, we talked a little bit about policy development. We're evaluating resources. We're doing peer policy analysis, so we look at other cities to see what other cities are doing and taking the best ideas from those cities and implementing in our own. And we also look at the costs associated with it. So that's, what does it cost for enforcement of these actions, whatever policy may be there? Do we need to add additional resources? Do we need to have a code enforcement officer that's available in the evening? A lot of different steps associated with that policy development. Little short-term rental 101. I see a lot of familiar faces, so we'll go over this quickly. But short-term rentals essentially are any type of rental that is rented for less than 30 days. Because after 30 days, the person becomes a tenant. A short-term rental could come in many different forms. It could come in the form of a casita. It could come in a whole house. It could come in the form of just a hosted rental. So the owner lives at the home and they rent out a couple rooms. There's a lot of various short-term rental configurations. What do Airbnb and other short-term rental platforms do? Well, they create a marketplace for these rentals. They allow people to go on their phone, go on the internet, and access listings that say, hey, this is available to rent. One of the challenges that the city has recognized early on is that there is not just one short-term rental company. We have many short-term rental companies. So we can't just reach out to one entity and say, all right, stop doing what you're doing. This is going to be it's going to require a more comprehensive approach to short-term rentals. So we've got a lot of different companies we have to deal with. Again, trying to familiarize with everyone with what short-term rentals are if you don't know. This is an example listing of a short-term rental in Temecula. And you would go in there, say, I want to go to a place in Temecula. You have a check-in and check-out date, number of people that you would like for your accommodations, and then you search. After you search, you're provided photos, listings on price information, map information on where it is in town. And you can make your decisions on where you want to go from those features. In terms of the market context, what does the short-term rental market look like? Well, it's grown about 800% since 2011, and that really is because of the ease of access that's occurred with the different Airbnb, VRBO applications. The market is fragmented. and we talked about all the different booking options earlier. So again, a lot of different people are using different avenues to get their short-term rentals. And really what we've had happen in our local area is that we have short-term rentals that have turned into a booming, unregulated economy currently. So how many short-term rentals are in Temecula? That's a common question. We estimate between 300 to 500 short-term rentals, and it's based upon the seasonality of the rentals. So during the summer and fall months when we have a lot of weddings, we have a lot more rentals. During the holidays, we may not have as many rentals. Why? Well, we've got a tourism economy here. We've got the wineries, we've got a casino, we've got Old Town Temecula, we've got sports and activities going on the weekend. We've got a lot of stuff going on in this valley, and so people are looking for accommodations. This map behind you, or behind me, is a short-term rental map that we did in June 2017. That map shows some of the various different short-term rental configurations that we talked a little bit about earlier. So that may be a casita, it may be a whole house, or it may be a hosted accommodation. So we just kind of wanted to place all these things on a map and start to see what's going on. What are we hearing thus far? Again, this is our 4th meeting of 5 meetings. Well, we've heard a lot about noise, we've heard a lot about trash, and we've heard a lot about parking and safety. A lot of reoccurring themes here. So we've heard that, clearly. We're also hearing from other people that are saying, we've got 1.2 million visitors to the Temecula Valley. This is a tourism revenue generator for these small, large, and medium businesses. And also, it's able to accommodate different people than a hotel may. So if you got a family that wants to stay at a facility, they can come there, and maybe they weren't able to do that before. For some of our residents, we've heard that this is a form of supplemental income. So this is how they're making ends meet and or generating revenue. What are the current regulations with short-term rentals in the city of Temecula? Well, currently, they are prohibited. They're not allowed. But with that, we have some limited tools for enforcement. Our code is not extensive in terms of how we can regulate these short-term rentals. We don't have an excessive fine structure in place. So there's a lot of things that we don't have the tools to correctly enforce this prohibited policy. There is one caveat to this. The city of Temecula does allow for a bed and breakfast if you have a 60,000 square foot lot and a conditional use permit. So that is the minimum requirement. We don't have many of these in the city of Temecula, but they have to go through a conditional use permit process, which requires a public hearing, and they have to meet a lot of different standards in order to operate a bed and breakfast legally within the city limits. So that's the only way you could have any type of short-term rental. How does the city respond to complaints? Well, our process goes through our code enforcement team, and it's on a case-by-case basis. A lot of these issues, we hear about noise, trash, etc. Well, we have the initial complaint, and sometimes our code enforcement team's not out there till the next day. So that's how we handle these processes, and it's not working. Why is this an issue? Well, the sharing economy wasn't envisioned when we originally wrote these regulations 20 plus years ago. We didn't envision peer-to-peer economy. We didn't envision a sharing economy. So we don't have the regulations that really can address the issues that have evolved with that economy. What about HOAs? We also often have questions about HOAs and what HOAs can and cannot do. So an HOA can always write regulations that are more restrictive than the city. For instance, if the city says you can have any color house that you would like, the HOA then can come in and say, you can only have 3 different colors on your house. But if the city restricts something, an HOA cannot do something against that. So if the city says you cannot have short-term rentals, then the HOA cannot say you can have short-term rentals. So just a little bit of explanation on how HOAs function within our role. So the city, again, prohibits short-term rentals. An HOA could not come in and say, yes, you can have them. Ultimately, the most important thing to know from this is the city cannot come in and enforce CC&Rs. What about other cities? We've been keeping our eyes on the different things that are going on throughout the nation, and predominantly here in California. There is no one-size-fits-all policy for these short-term rentals in any city. Every city has a wide variation on whether allowed, not allowed, how long they're allowed, duration, hosted, unhosted. There is no one-size-fits-all policy. What we need is a tailored approach to our community, and that's what a lot of other communities are doing, and so that's what we're doing here today, is getting that initial feedback on what should short-term rentals look like, not look like in Temecula. What does our outreach process look like? We've got a website, it's temeculaca.gov/Temecula Rentals. We also have these 5 community meetings, and this is our flyer here. Again, this is the 4th of 5 meetings. And we also have social media, as well as a survey that is available on our city's website. This presentation is available online as well at that city's website if anybody wants that, so you're always welcome to have that. One important thing is after we go through our community feedback portion, we do have a survey afterwards. We really want you to stay here for that survey. It's really important, so please don't run off. We want to get your feedback. I forgot to mention one thing earlier. We are recording this meeting for streaming purposes later on, so it will be on YouTube, so I wanted to let everyone know that, so when you make your comments, you're aware of that. And those meetings are all available online, and the previous meetings are already up and available as well. All right, this is the public feedback portion of the meeting. We do have a few ground rules for this part. First, we have speaker slips that we'd like you to fill out. Lynn in the back will be happy to take your public speaker slip. If you don't have one, please ask for one and she'll get you one. We do ask that you're respectful to other people in the room. Everybody comes from a different dinner table, and we want to ensure that we're having respect when we're having this conversation and dialogue. We have a 3-minute rule, so you have 3 minutes to make your comments. If for some reason you run out of time and you still want to communicate something to us, shoot us an email, give us feedback on that survey, and we will include it with our analysis. So again, you have 3 minutes. If you run out of time, send us additional feedback, and we will incorporate it. We ask that you please use thumbs down or thumbs up instead of clapping, whether you support or do not support something. We want to get an accurate recording of all the information, and it helps with the audio when people do thumbs up or thumbs down, and it allows us to do visual analysis afterwards, because we can say, oh, look, the room had 50% support or 50% in opposition, versus we can't tell how many people were booing or clapping, okay? So it really does help us on that. And with that, Lynn, we can have the first speaker now.
Great, thank you, Brandon. Just a reminder, not everyone is comfortable speaking in front of the group. So as Brandon said, if you have other feedback, please feel free to reach out to us via our website, the survey, email us, talk to us afterwards. We do want to hear from you. And this is not the only opportunity to provide your feedback. So we have a lot of old faces here, so welcome back. We have a lot of new faces too. As always, I apologize if I butcher your name. Our first speaker is Eduardo Humeres.
Well, my name is Eduardo Humeres. I'm happy to be here. My girls come to the school. I just want to testify in terms of what happened with my property. There was Airbnb in front of Paseo del Sol, my house. We took maybe 9 to 10 months to change the bylaws in our Paseo del Sol laws there. We give them pictures, recorded in terms of how many times the police came by to take a ticket for the people parking wrong place. We provided all the instruments for them to take the decision. And what happened is that nobody can advertise their property for less than 30 days. They cannot use a website, and the fines went really up, so it matters. The property that we had was somebody who bought it and knowingly rented or gave it to somebody to manage it. That person who managed the property posted the daughter's face on it because he had access to college. They falsely claimed that were their property, which is false. Please take care of my property. This is our home. Our family comes back after you guys leave. Nothing of that was true. So when people think that this is going to be in a good, willing way, that everybody's going to be behaving in base behavior, that's not the case. The owner was called several times for the Walters Management property, and he said, okay, I'm going to talk with them, He knew that people were doing it wrong. And still, it took 9 months to change the policy in our community. The problem that I have with this Airbnb, the baseline is that the business model is wrong. It's based on us neighbors taking care of their property during this time, which I think is awful. So the person who owns the property has the luxury to go back home and sleep well, and the neighbors take care of the property during the night. And I hear you, that's why I'm talking to you again, because I hear you when you made your presentation, the city is not gonna come at 2 o'clock in the morning. The police takes time to respond. In my case, always responded, so I cannot say that they didn't respond. But when they went one time, the noise was gone. It took 30 minutes, of course. This is a low priority thing, so it'll take 30 minutes to an hour. When they got there, the noise was gone. So I say, Mr. Jimenez, sorry, I can't do anything because nothing's happening right now. So that's the biggest issue that I have. If you can allow somebody to rent rooms and the owners stay there, that's a different story. But once they leave, they leave. It's like if you have an hotel here in Temecula and a manager say, you know what, I'm leaving, see you next morning at 6 o'clock for breakfast. What would happen?
We're going to have you wrap up your comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Schneider.
Yeah, my name is Bob Schneider. This is my third and last meeting that I'm going to attend. But pretty much we live next door to an Airbnb that's basically a party house. And Brandon, you hit the nail on the head when you said this is a great place and a time frame of weddings and parties. And that's exactly what is occurring every weekend is parties, weddings, and pretty much, unfortunately, the guests don't really care because they figured they spent their money, so they're going to get what they paid for. I've looked at all options, and the two options that I came down to that is going to help my family sleep at night, not getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning with people in the hot tub. And I got to read something to you. This is a Yelp on my next door neighbor. So long story short, now remember, this is the person that rented it. Long story short, the property is nice, but if you have any interest in enjoying their nice backyard or hot tub after 10 p.m., look for another location. This is the guest, and you have to understand when you're going through, and I'm sorry, you work for the city of Temecula, and are you going to be part of these meetings then in deciding on what's going to be done? Okay, good. Because basically, all I'm going to ask is what you hear of everybody with the horror stories. And I mean, the first meeting, I wasted a lot of time going over horror stories. Trust me, there's horror stories out there. But all I ask of you, sir, is to think when you're in that meeting, what if it was me? And what if my next door neighbor had the house and an Airbnb partying at 2 o'clock in the morning every weekend? What if it was me? What would I do? Just keep that in mind. And I still think, and last but not least, is that I consider these short-term rentals hotels. And you know what? Hotels have rules. I don't think they have police enforcement with it, but they have their rules. 10 o'clock, you're out of that hot tub. You're out of the pool. You think there's going to be a party next door in the room that the hotel is going to allow? They're not. So when you're making your decisions on this, you just have to think about what the hotel rules are, should be the same and even more stricter for the residential area where people live. That's it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Greg Fan.
Hi. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I signed up just in case I wanted to say something. First, I just want to thank the city for putting this together. I think it's a great forum. We are new residents of Temecula and love living here. We do have a space in our house that would be conducive to an Airbnb type situation. I don't want to make my life a problem. I don't want to make my neighbor's life a problem. So I wanted to hear feedback, and I don't want to get in a situation as you did. Certainly don't want to be in a situation as you were. I would think, though, that, you know, the problems that we're talking about, they're true for homeowners as well as guests. You don't want anybody out partying at 2 o'clock every night. Happens more with vacationers because they're in a party mode, but I think the city should be enforcing that type of stuff, just whether it's a guest or a resident. So I'm interested to hear what everybody says. I haven't had a chance to watch the videos. I'd like to watch those, but I think doing it the right way and having the right people and having rules, as a hotel would have rules, is considerate for your neighbors. So I'm not totally against it, but I understand there are problems, and again, appreciate the city putting this together. I think it's a fabulous idea.
Thank you. I do only have a few speaker slips left, so I know there were a few people that were holding on to them. And if you hadn't decided yet, thank you, there are more on the back table. Our next speaker is Doris Luth.
And it's my fourth and final meeting because I'll be on vacation next week, so I couldn't make it. But I'd love to because that's in my neighborhood. Okay, pardon me? No, it's not. No, believe me. I've listened to both sides, okay? And for those who know me, I'm against the big party houses and the rentals going on. I've heard the stories about the real estate people that are here that are the leasing agents that just want to book a house for the weekend for the people that are having their house for termites and the small wedding parties or their dietary restrictions where they need a kitchen. And if that was the only thing that was going on, I don't think we would be here, you know. But that's not what's happening. It's these big houses that Airbnb is putting out there that sleeps 20, 30 people, 16 beds, and it's all about the money for them because the more people you rent the house out to, the more money you're gonna make. Because I've looked on the website, for 2 people, it's a cheaper price. If you have 10 people, then it's like $1,000 a weekend. It goes up and up and up. So, and I get kind of get the feeling that the big party houses are pretty much telling the neighbors to like suck it up. Well, I'm not going to suck it up. You know, we shouldn't have to put up with that. One's private or property, what do you call it, owning property usurp somebody else's right to owning property. You know, I can't run an auto repair shop out of my house and have things going 24/7. You know, so why should we have a hotel next door with a revolving door that's going 24/7? And it's not just the weekends, you know. I've heard the stories where the people have given up a lot to move here. I mean, we've lived here for 29 years, but it was new and upcoming and everything, you know. So, you know, our kids went to great public schools and got a great education, but now, you know, there's people that give up everything to live here and they're commuting 2 hours to San Diego and then they're commuting to LA. And the people that live here, their houses are their sanctuary. You come home to your house, you should have that right, expect it to be a safe place. And I don't understand how people can want to profit over other people's misery. That's just not my way of thinking. You know, Temecula is in the top 10 safest places to live. And I would really hate to see that go downhill and Temecula have a big black eye when we're on the news because there was a party where people didn't want to leave, going on in a residential neighborhood where then somebody gets shot or something like that. I mean, that's not the kind of Temecula I want.
Our next speaker is Jack Anderson.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be honest here. I'm an Airbnb superhost, so I'm on the other side. I raised my family here in Temecula, and then life changed, and then my family home became a long-term rental. I've since sold that home in Temecula. Just to be clear, I'm not in the Temecula community right now, but I am in a neighboring community. I've had experience on both sides, long-term and short-term. I'm doing short-term right now. I had far more trouble with my long-term tenants than I've ever had with a short-term tenant. Now, to give you a kind of an idea, I'm a real estate investor doing fixer-uppers, things like that. which evolved us into the Airbnb business model. We're professionals, and we just strive to maintain a very high level of service, and our reputation, or my company reputation, is extremely important to me and will not be compromised. So I run a very tight ship, so to speak. The guests that I'm hosting, doctors, traveling nurses, sales professionals, traveling workers, pilots, couples coming for the wedding, I've had them all, okay? But all of my tenants have been very courteous, cordial, polite, clean, no issues, okay? The short-term rental is a new industry, and because the freight train has left the station, it's time to catch up. And so what's going on, we're seeing a lot of these problems you're citing, noise, parking, trash, and safety, and the parties seem to be the bigger ones. I think those are more of a nuisance than a problem, okay? Because the hosts that take this to a professional level do not have that problem. If there is an issue, it is the host's responsibility to make sure that the curfew is set up, and we do have rules for our stays. So we expect our guests to read them because they get them before arrival. Safety is my primary concern. You know, I've installed technology and lighting, dusk to dawn lighting, to make sure that I'm not going to have a trip hazard or something simple like that for people coming to our home. We create jobs. We have cleaning people, maintenance, and hosts. So we're providing other avenues for the city and jobs. The solutions, I think, it's going to be the host's primary, whether it be a primary residence or a secondary residence. It's really the person in charge of that property. And I agree. If it's my property, I need to know, clearly. Quiet hours need to be clearly identified. Parking, I attempt to offer off-street parking. Not always possible. Street parking is street parking, first come, first serve. You know, I have to battle that in my own neighborhood, okay? And then, like I said, safety is the biggest one. There's a couple of other things. I suggest you read the San Diego thing.
I'm going to have you wrap up your comments.
I'm going to tell you, it's not a good thing, and it's going to cost the city of San Diego hundreds of thousands of dollars in court fees.
Just a reminder, 3 minutes is not a lot of time, so if you'd like to email us your comments, we would love to read them. After the public comment, the staff will be around. Our next speaker is Rebecca Longo.
Thank you. I'm a resident right here in Vintage Hills. I'm also on the board of directors for our HOA. We pay HOA fees on a monthly basis. When we moved into Temecula, we had a decision to make if you want to live in an HOA or if you want to live outside of an HOA. So it's impacting the people within an HOA that are paying for this sanctuary that designed that model, because I'm also one of those commuters that go down to San Diego. So we had an Airbnb across the street from us. I started noticing every weekend, different cars, different people coming and going. When I finally had it up to here with it, was when my kids pointed out in the morning, this lady walking out of the house, being picked up on the corner by Uber, wearing evening clothes, okay? So this is a family community. These are designed as single family homes. They weren't designed as rentals. And I'm sure the families with young children, don't want that aspect for their children to look out the window and, oh, who's that? You know, walking down the street. That's what we bought into Temecula for. It is a safe city, but we're having problems with mail theft. We're having problems with people approaching doorbells and ringing them at all hours of night. We have problems with cars being broken into. Mine has been broken into twice. So it brings in another element that we didn't anticipate. And who knows if it's these short-term rentals, they start looking around the neighborhood and wow, you pretty much keep up your neighborhood. And it is an affluent city. And I'm totally against it because I did not buy into it. They were across the street. They weren't next door. But just to have that element, inviting it in, if you had regulations, if you stricter regulations. We're still trying to identify how does the HOA regulate it. We don't allow short-term rentals right now, and we're waiting for the city to make up their mind and implement something into a code. But at this point in time, we sent out letters. I think we had like 10 of them operating that we knew of in this community. And we sent out letters, and I know the one across the street from me is no longer operating. So I appreciate if you're going to do it, work with the HOAs, and then we can also implement whatever regulations you're putting in place, because it is going to impact the family model, the serenity, the whole community. And who's paying our HOA fees for the securing the mailboxes? Right now, our mailboxes aren't secured. We're encouraging people to gather their mail every day on a nightly basis. Some homeowners think it's the HOA's responsibility to provide that security. It wasn't incorporated into our budget, then our assessments are going to go up if we start putting in locking mailboxes. And then they can also break into those, and if you put the gang boxes, they get 40 residences at one time, so that's another element.
I'm going to have you wrap up your comments if you want to submit more.
So again, I'm against it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jessica Abrego.
Hey guys, I'm back. As you all know, if you don't know, I am definitely pro Airbnb. I am a superhost myself, and I have great success. And so far, I've been doing it for about 3 years. My neighbors, we've had one party. We had to get them out, and it happens. But we do have strict regulations. We just started with the fees that I was telling you about. I also just partnered with this gentleman from Texas, and I wanted to let you all know about this thing. It's a sensor you can put in your wall, and it reads the sound. And then after a certain hour, it'll send me a message. It'll send my security a message. It can also send it to the owner. And so then I can immediately, if the quiet hours are at 10, I can set it up for 9:30. So if the noise reaches a certain rate, I can then call the guest and say, hey, quiet hours are at 10. You need to be quiet. And I have fees associated. I've already kind of mentioned that last time. So $100 if I have to call you, $300 if I have to show up, $500 if the police show up. And that will be dispersed to the neighbors. I'm not here to profit off of my neighbors' inconvenience. That is the last thing I want. I'm a single mom myself, and I live here in town. My kids need to sleep. I respect everybody here, and I understand that you want to get a good night's sleep. So do I, and I respect that, and I hear you. And so that's why we're making these efforts. We hear your complaints, and we're making sure that your issue and your issue is no more for anybody else. That's the last thing we want. So, thank you.
I just have one more slip. So if you are thinking of speaking, I now have 2 more slips. If you're thinking of speaking, there are still speaker slips on the back table. And please submit them to one of the staff members when you have a chance. Our next speaker is Ron Shamgert.
Hi, I live on Monique, very close to here. And when I moved to Temecula in 2000, the thing that caught my attention was the fact that Temecula was built with families in mind. And it's a beautiful town. But lately, we have this noise that is very aggravating for everybody. My son gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he hasn't been able to sleep because people is partying until 2:30 in the morning. And I know the neighbors down below, they called the police. The police came at 3:35, 3:40. I mean, after they called them around 12. I recall an occasion that we were celebrating our anniversary. 8 o'clock, we were singing karaoke, okay? 8 o'clock, and somebody called the police at 8 o'clock. And the police was right there, and I said to myself, wow, this people doesn't have life because it's 8 o'clock. But then I understand that they want to make money, like you want to make money, she wants to make money, and everybody wants to make money. But they have to have in consideration the other persons, us, the ones who live there, not the ones who rent the house. Because you rent the house, you're not there. And if we called you at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to show up, right? Oh, you won't show up. You won't show up. I hope you do. But that's the thing. I mean, I have been in Italy, I've been in Mexico, I've been in France, and we have rent Airbnb. But they have regulations. 10 o'clock, boom, that's it. No noise. You go to Bryce Canyon and you camp. 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, boom, that's it. Why cannot we have that regulations here? And why, if we pay association, we have to put up with that? You know, I think the city should think of those things, not just talk about those things, but really think about it and do something. And if they're so quick to respond, the police, I mean, you see something happens in Temecula and it's 3-4 cars, police cars right there. We got a guy at 2 o'clock in the morning blasting their stereo, and you call, it's only music. He doesn't have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, but he's working, of course, we understand that. So if you think about those things, and you think, if you put your position in our position, maybe you can do something.
Our next speaker is Jeff Vagley. Thank you for the little pronunciation.
Thank you. Again, my name is Jeff Vagley. I'm a resident here in Temecula since 2011. I was at the last meeting. Some of you guys may have heard me, some may not. We moved up here for the prime reasons that I think most people did. And the way I explain it is Temecula is a gem. It is off, away from some of the stuff that goes off in Riverside, LA, San Diego. This is a very special place. It's a great community for families. It's a great community to have kids grow up in this area, et cetera, et cetera. I've had personal problems with short-term rentals in my area. Thank God we have an HOA that I finally realized what was going on, and they nipped that in the bud real quick. And since then, because of some of the problems that have been going on with this, they've had to raise rates, which I highly encourage. They have stiff fines for this. And that's what, first of all, I believe the city should not even allow this. If they do, and sadly enough, I agree in some cases that the train has left the station, they need to follow certain rules, which, as you guys mentioned before, there's a conditional use permit hearing that has to go on. I think that should go on for every one of these facilities that wants to rent their houses out or anything like that. If you're going to rent them out, I think it should be limited to where the homeowner has to be at that home. He has to be living there. He or she has to be living there. So you can deal with those problems firsthand. The reality, and then what's more is if it does come to this, then there has to be hefty fines. First time it's $250, next time it's $500. Time after that, it's $1,000, and it goes up in incremental marks like that, finally to the point where they come in and shut them down. I don't know what that mechanism is, but I highly encourage the city to look at that. The reality is, for everybody that stands up here that says they've got their policies in place, they've got their methods in place, and they can police this and they stop the noise, the reality is you can't. No matter what, if you haven't had one yet, you will have one. And what are you going to do? You're going to get up in the middle of the night. You may do it a couple of times. There's going to be exceptions to that rule. No neighbor, nobody like that, a neighbor should have to be dealing with that, not even once. Okay? I really hope Temecula hears their residents and hears their people, and they put a stop to this or put regulations in that are so stiff that it's not worth doing this. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has not had an opportunity to speak that would like to speak tonight? Okay. If you want to provide feedback, and we do encourage you, there is a survey, which Brandon will talk about in just a minute. But also, please feel free to email us, talk to us afterwards. We want to hear your feedback. So thank you. Brandon.
I just want to thank everyone again for speaking this evening. We're not going to do question answer form right now. You can come speak with us individually. We're going to work on our polling part right here, okay? So a little bit about what's going to happen next. important part is, again, we're going to take that survey in just a moment. I'm going to have Casey from HARC, who's one of our consultants, administer that survey. We're going to be collecting additional feedback. This is not the last meeting. So we're going to have one more meeting after this, and then we're going to be looking at all the data, and we may have additional information or meetings after that. But at minimum, we are going to be having at least a planning commission meeting that is a public hearing that will be noticed to everybody. We will have a city council meeting that will, again, be a public hearing and will be noticed as well. So you can look for those notices on the paper, the city's website. You'll see them. It's really hard to miss them when you're looking on the city's website. Stay tuned to temecula.ca.gov/Temecula Rentals. We'll have additional meeting if we decide to have additional meetings beyond this or any other form of outreach. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Casey, who will administer the survey. Our staff's able to help and answer questions after the survey as well.
Good evening again, everyone. So it's now time to take the short-term rental survey if you haven't done so already. If you have a device, I can guide you through the process of taking it on your phone. And if you don't have a phone, then we have paper surveys available. So you'll first start by going to the internet by going to www.slido.com. Go to slido.com and it'll ask for the event code, and you'll just type in TEM1. And from there, it should direct you right to the survey. I want to remind you again, it's entirely confidential. We won't track who you are, who submitted the survey, so feel free to share your comments freely there. Once you're done, you'll hit submit at the end, and you're good to go. One of the very first questions asks what district you live in, and we're going to put up a image on the front that'll show you a map, or we can help you individually. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and we'll come around and help you with the process. So this will, the survey on Slido will be available for about 2 more days. Or you can go to the Temecula website, and it's available there also. If you go to the short-term rental page, it's actually right there, surveymonkey.com/r/Temecula Rentals, and that'll be up for at least until the end of August. So feel free to share that link with anyone. We do want people to take the survey there also, so please. If you have any questions, we'll be around to answer them. Thank you again for coming. We appreciate everyone taking time out of your busy lives to come here today. Thank you.
Again, if you need district, to figure out which district you're in to answer that question, our staff's available to assist you with that.